Hello there, my name's Sam Owens. I'm Technology Lead at Clarion Housing Group. You may have seen a set of blog posts that I've been writing regarding performance testing with Dynamics 365 customer engagement and Unified Service Desk. So just to give you a bit of background, my organisation rolled out Dynamics ERP in April last year, and part of that program was we needed to understand the performance impact of using Dynamics 365 CE with Unified Service Desk within a Citrix Zen app environment. And we use a lot of Citrix Zen app for our users, works really well for us, but really needed to understand what that best performance environment was for users in terms of how much CPU and RAM they would require with this particular workload. So in the past we would have used something like Login VSI to complete this kind of testing, which is a really good product to throw users at servers and see what the impact is. But unfortunately during this period we had difficulties with the licensing that we had purchased, and also the workload that we were trying to create was testing the boundaries of what could be done out of the box to that product. So we looked at alternatives, and the way looking forward was using PowerShell, something that I'm particularly familiar with and is inbuilt in Windows anyway. You don't have to go and install other products and things like that. So what I've created is a workload script which will mimic a process that one of our customer service agents will complete and repeat that over and over again. And there's a number of challenges regarding that. So we wanted to understand how long certain things took to complete. We needed it to be robust enough so that there didn't need to be somebody sitting there whilst the tests were being completed to fix any issues on the fly, but it to be repeatable enough that we can determine the impact of users to servers. Also created another script which is a controller script which will launch those sessions to multiple servers and collect data from those servers about CPU usage, memory usage, that kind of thing. So this particular video I'm looking to show you now, it has a sort of a cut down version of that script against a demo environment which I've created. It will show you some of the challenges and how I've overcome them. This could be used for stuff outside of Dynamics. It could be used for just testing in other applications potentially, but there are some specific Unified Service Desk things in there which I think you'll find quite useful. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you've got any feedback or anything, then please make some comments or send me an email. That'd be fantastic.
Hi there guys, as you can see on my screen, this is a workload script which I mentioned previously. This is a cut down version just in a demo environment. It's far less complicated than the one that we use in our production environment, but hopefully gives you a bit of a view as to what's possible, how you could create your own potentially. So I've just got this open in PowerShell on the Windows Server 2016 VM. There's lots of the stuff that I've mentioned in my previous blog posts, the functions that we've created to try and get Windows focus here, the function that I pulled from the Stack Overflow regarding click mouse button, one that created about a log off session, so this will come in more useful for when I show you the controller script so that we can close all the sessions down in a graceful way later on. I've got a function here which I didn't mention in the previous one called prep session, so this is quite useful for stuff that you might want to do one time at the start of the script, but you don't want to be part of a loop that constantly runs. For an example, I want it to start Unified Service Desk, but I don't want it to keep restarting that as it goes around the loop basically. And then there's the check status function which I mentioned previously. So what this will do is it will, depending on the task that you're trying to complete, it will look for a specific line in the log file, and it will keep looking for that until it has the number of entries in there to proceed on to the next step. It'll provide some feedback in the UI that we created, which I'll come to in a second. I've got an error occurred function, so potentially we can put something in the check log idle and check status parts, that if it doesn't get what it expects to see within a certain period of time, then it will send an email to you. So I've just put some dummy entries here and used the send mail message function, which is inbuilt in PowerShell. Obviously that won't go anywhere because that's not my SMTP server, but you get the idea. The check lock idle function is a cut down version of the check status. So there are some tasks which don't always come back with a reliable amount of page load completes or something there that's tangible and robust enough to understand when a task is complete. So what this does is a little bit less clever. It will just look for the entries in the log file, and it will keep looking until that entries have stopped being written to it by Unified Service Desk. What's quite cool about this is it can be used for anything, right? If the log file is not being written to, then it's safe to assume that Unified Service Desk is probably not doing anything. It will go around this loop a number of times. 10 times I've put here, because if there's lots of contention on the CPU, it might be that it's not writing to the log file because actually there's no resources to do that. But 10 times is probably safe enough to enable the next task to complete without it being a ridiculously long time where steps are being waited for, basically. Then I've got the UI, which I've mentioned previously. So this just gives you some feedback as to what task is going on at that time, and some feedback on how those checks are going on in the background, those two functions I mentioned previously. Then we enable the prep session function, or call the prep session function, I should say, just to start up Unified Service Desk, and then we start getting into the actual steps. So here we're going to click search. We're going to look for this particular line in the log file. We're going to measure how long that takes to complete. We're going to add some information into a CSV file on the server so we can see how long these tasks take. There's a couple of items that we couldn't actually find. Nothing actually gets written to the log or anything to latch onto. So there are some things where there are just a sleep time that I've put in place, but we try to keep those as few and far between as possible, really. So we load the contact. Again, measuring the command here. You can see here I've commented out a piece here where when I was trying to do contact load screen before, actually I was looking for page load completes, but every time I kept trying that, the number of those really differed in each different run. So we had to go back to check log idle, basically. Creating a new service request, same thing over and over again, basically verifying the customer info, creating a case. There's some other bits here where I'm having to type something, so I'm using send keys, as I mentioned in my blog post here, and just going through the process, basically. So there's nothing revolutionary as I keep going down the script here. At the end, I've just basically said just keep doing this loop here, so when the process has been completed, it will just carry on going and going and going until I manually either stop the script from running, or again, as I mentioned earlier, my controller script will can manage this from one place. So what I can do from my controller script is essentially write a text file to all of the Citrix XANAPP servers that are out there, and what this logoff session function will do is it will check for the existence of that text file. Now, if that file exists, then it will do a bunch of tasks, and it will make this variable true. So therefore, it will break out of this loop. It will clean down the session, log the person off, and that's obviously really useful if you're sending out lots of these sessions to lots of different servers. You don't want to have to be manually going around and logging them all off and putting them into a clean state, basically. So yeah, without much further ado, let's see how this works. So I'm just going to start this. You can see it's kicked off Unified Service Desk, and in the bottom left hand corner we've got the feedback there, and what that's basically saying that there's 36 entries in the log of the dashboard load complete. I need to get past 38 for the next task to carry on, basically. So let's see how this rolls. So just wait for the dashboard to load up. You should see that number just quickly popped up to 39. The search has worked fine, so it's typing in the button letter, and now it's loading a contact. So at this point here you can see that I need 10 iterations of that check status loop, basically, before I can move on to the next step. So what you might see sometimes is that it looks like it's idle and might have to go back to 0 again. So you see there it looked like it was idle for 3 seconds or 3 loops, and it wasn't. So it looks like Unified Service Desk is probably finished, and there we go. So just going through the process, verify customer info, creating a case. Again, creating a case was one where it was difficult to latch onto anything specific, which was robust enough for us to check the log file, so we used the same mechanism as before, basically. So just typing a bit of text in there. saving the case, and then we'll just carry on the process. Now, full disclosure here, I'm not a Dynamics 365 functional expert, so these processes might be slightly different and might work in slightly different ways, but all I'm looking for here is just a way to reliably go around and round this loop and test and understand the performance impact of having more than one person on this server. So at the moment it's just me on this server. It's probably pretty reliable to understand how the timings are going to be pretty similar, but the controller script, which I'll probably show you in a different video, will really show you the impact of having more than one user on this server, or if there's any CPU contention, basically. So yeah, as you can see, this is just going to keep rolling around until I stop it, basically. So pretty useful, and you can see how you could use this for other applications potentially, or you could make it applicable to your environment. So I'm just gonna, rather than let that roll, I'm just going to stop this script now and just show you one thing which is quite neat. So we talked about the timing before, so we've got the CSV file that's been created here. So you can see my user, so if you had lots of people on the server, you could see the different usernames on there. You can see how long those commands took to complete, just a date and time, so you can clear out any old entries if you're just looking at a specific test, and then the step that it was. So you can see that actually, you know what, it took 20 odd seconds from the point of launching USD to the dashboard actually being open. That took 20 seconds. Well, that's quite useful to know, right? If you've got somebody in the business that says, well, you know what, it takes this amount of time for it to load, you can run those tests and change certain things, maybe change things like performance settings in Dynamics CE, or adding more resourcing, saying, actually, you know what, now it takes less time. So this is really, really good information. Having that output of some performance testing is the most important thing, rather than trying to make it perception based. So this has been really, really useful. Anyway, hopefully that's given you an idea of what's possible. If you've got any comments, then please feel free to leave them. I'd love to know your feedback, and if there's anything else that you'd like to see, or there are any other neater ways of doing some of this stuff, it'd be really useful to know. So thanks for listening. Cheers.